A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video.
So in this video, I'm going to critique some of the photos that have failed recently. I'm going to try and explain why they've failed. At the time when I was taking them, I probably didn't see this, but I'm going to go back to them and explain why they failed. I'm also going to show some photos that worked as well.
I could dry out in the sun for you, follow the deep dark ocean down.
Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. You can see I've got a little bit of a different setup here in my studio because I want to show you my monitor and go through some of the images on here. And what I want to do is go through a bit of a composition critique. So go through some photos that didn't really work, and I get a lot of these. A lot of the photos that I take don't work. I think they're going to work in the field, and then I get back and I'm just disappointed with them. I'm sure everybody can relate to that. So I'm going to go through and explain why I don't think they work, and then talk about some photos that do work as well, and hopefully that'll be useful and you can see what goes through my head when I'm composing images. So first of all, this shot here. So this was an amazing snowy day that we had a few weeks ago. This is local to me, just on the west side of the Peak District. And I went to this spot here and it was snowing. You can see if you zoom in a little bit that the snow just coming down, it looked fantastic. And this sheep just came here and I knew I didn't have a lot of time. So I waited for the sheep just to be in the right spot. There was this bunch of trees and there was a little bit of faint walls in the background. And this is a photo that nearly worked but didn't quite work. And the reason being is that here, this area here is just too messy. This area here that I didn't really notice at the time of sort of bushes interferes with the background trees. I think if this wasn't there and we had the curve of the snow going down here and it was like a valley leading down through, I think that would have worked. But because I had this messy area here, this area sort of draws your eye all the time. So it's nearly there, but it isn't quite there. And then if I go to the next image here, this was when it was snowing really hard. And I wanted to get sort of a feeling of that snow. And I was really struggling for composition because I was walking up through this path here. And I just thought this stone looked good in the foreground, but it's just too complicated. I mean, I could crop off this area here and I could crop off this area here, but the really interesting part was this tree here. So I sort of realized that when I was taking the shot, so I moved a little bit closer, and you can see that the next shot, there's some people walking down here, but the next shot was this one a little bit closer. And then when I got to this shot, I thought I'm too close and I'm cutting off the top of the trees. So I needed to move a little bit further back. And then when I went to this shot, I think this one works the best. So I think I'm nearly there with this shot, but it still isn't quite there for me. So I feel that even though I've got the atmosphere and I've got the snow coming down and that looks fantastic, I've got the right shutter speed for the snow, I just feel that this fence just feels like it's sort of an afterthought to the composition. I actually don't know if there's a great composition here. I have thought about just chopping off and just including this bit, but I think it needs this breathing room here. But I think if this was a wall going down, but because the fence is sort of just too, I suppose it's got a heavy weight to it and your eye just draws down to it all the time. For me, it's not quite there. It's probably a 7 or an 8 out of 10, but didn't quite think it worked. So then on a different day when it was really snowy, the snow had finished coming down and I was shooting this scene here, and I felt that this was probably going to be the shot that would work the best. You know, everything seemed to come together. We had this sort of really sort of fairy tale feel to it. But again, I don't think this shot works. And I think the reason being is that there's just, your eye just darts around a lot. You go to this central tree here, which is what ended up being a really good shot for me. But this central tree here, and then you go to this tree, and then you go to this sort of fir tree here. And it doesn't really look like I've concentrated on any one thing. It doesn't look like there's purposeful composition in it. And from that point of view, I don't think this works. However, if I zoom in a little bit and just go for this tree, which is what I did, and this is what ended up being Prima, one of the shots, it's a portfolio shot of mine, then you can see that suddenly it becomes a much more interesting shot. In fact, I've got a print here. Let's have a look at this. So you can see with this print here, it just works really. I had to, as I showed in another video, just clone out a little bit of that tree that you could see on the left-hand side here. But I think the whole thing just works as a standalone composition. And sometimes in photography, you've got to cut out things that maybe look interesting, but don't add to the overall composition of the scene. And I think this is a really good example where I went from that wider shot with the 3 trees in it to this sort of more narrow portrait orientation, which I think just looks a lot better. It's a very good portrait of this tree, and I think that's why it works. Okay, so let's go on to another one. Actually, I've got another print to show you. So there's a print here that I think looks pretty good. So this one is another good example of a composition that I think works. So this is a shot that I took whilst I was driving home. Actually, I just stopped at the side of the road. I knew about these trees, I've photographed these trees before, and I think the reason this composition works is that I've got this central tree here, and because these trees are a slight angle within the scene, then you get that drop off with the fog, and that because they're fading away, it creates this really nice position for the tree to come into, and I purposely did that. So I could have gone a little bit further around this way, but I think then the 2 elements of the scene would have been too detached. But having it like this, it sort of connects this tree to these trees, but the fog helps separate them as well. And then I really thought about the distance that I've got on the side of the image, so here and here, because I think that makes a difference as well. If you go too tight, then I think it doesn't give it enough breathing room, but I think this just works quite well. And then the other thing that I noticed in the field that I really liked was this shadow that was being created. There wasn't a lot of light, but there was a little bit of light coming through, and it was creating this shadow here that then sort of disappeared into the snow. And I feel by giving it a little bit of breathing room here, that shadow works really, really well in the scene. So I was really pleased with this. It worked really well. It's one of my favorite shots this winter. And yeah, I really like it. So this was a shot that I took when I was in Madeira. You saw it on the video. I'll put a link up here somewhere, up there somewhere. And it was a lot of serendipity, especially with the bird landing here. But I feel that everything came together in this shot, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the composition because I think it's important. So I'd really thought very hard about the positioning of this tree, and it was quite hard to get into the position that I wanted to be to get it just right. So you can see that the branches don't interfere here, they just don't interfere there, so that was really important to me. And then I also wanted to make sure that the branches didn't go above the line of this mountain in the top, and that's really important because that mountain just gives you that perception that we're not just we haven't just got these mountains here, but there's bigger mountains in the background, which gives the scene a vaster feel to it. So by having that mountain just appear is really important, but if it appeared and the tree had gone over the top of it, then that wouldn't have worked so much. So that was really important. Obviously the bird landing was just look, but then I also wanted to include this tree here because I felt like without that tree there, it was just a little bit too simple, the scene, but having that tree there just anchors this right hand side of the shot, and I feel like then the whole image just comes together. The final thing that worked on this composition was waiting for sunlight to hit the tree, and then that sunlight lit up the actual foliage in the foreground here, and that foliage, when it was lit by light, was then separated from the background a little bit more, which added to the three-dimensional feel and the composition of that image. So there was a lot of elements that came together to make this image work, and I was really, really pleased with it. Again, in this shot, I think everything just came together to make it work. It was slightly different, same tree, different time of day, and I did a long exposure here because I wanted to blur out the white cloud, and I feel like this allows the tree to stand forward of the background. So clever use of shutter speed was really important in this shot. There's a few things that I'm not sure about with this shot. I don't like this area here where people have walked around. I feel like it's, you know, on the previous shot you can see that area gets hidden a little bit, whereas on this one it's a bigger part of the composition. But yeah, I give that a 9 out of 10. And then there was a few other tree shots I wanted to speak about. So the first one was this one. So this was a shot of the tree. I moved into a different position, and I felt this worked as well. Again, I thought very carefully about the position of the branches up here. Unfortunately, when I was taking this one, the background mountains didn't appear. So I like this shot. I love the colouring of the shot. The purple and the green work really well together, but it just doesn't have that depth that the other shot has, which is a shame. And then this is a shot that didn't work. So this was a shot that I tried. I really like this branch here, or this tree here just falling over. But I feel like I was just trying to get overcomplicated with it. I was trying to get one of the branches in with the clouds in the background and the other one in the dark mountain. But I just couldn't quite get into the position. But I was just trying to be so overcomplicated with this, and what I should have done was just forget it. I don't like the fact that the tree just comes up here. The blue sky just pulls your eye away as well, which I don't think works. I felt like it might work in a black and white, but it didn't when I tried it. So yeah, I don't think that worked. There's just too much going on. This in shade, this in sunlight, this tree here, this tree here. It's just too complicated, and because it's got a lot of things going on, I just don't think it works as a composition very well. I wanted to talk a little bit about Fennel Forest a little bit more, and I took a lot of shots here. I think I took over 1,000 images. A lot of them didn't work. Most of them didn't work. So this is a good example of a composition when I was in the field that I thought was going to be so good. And I really was careful about where I positioned all the trees and this tree here. But then when I got back, I just felt that this tree just ruined it. Yeah, so this tree here just didn't quite work in the composition. I felt that I should have probably just thought more carefully about this side of it. I always think about visual weights, about what draws your eye, and sometimes it's good to use visual weight to draw your eye in a particular way, but in this particular scene I want my eye to go through it, and I feel that I'm being pulled to this complicated area just at the right hand side here. Maybe this tree here just doesn't work either, and then I've got to crop in too far that this tree goes off the side, so I'd have to crop in even further, and it just doesn't work as I had intended. Oh, I should say, if you're liking the video, please give it a thumbs up. You know, that really makes a difference to me and helps the YouTube algorithm. And I'm really interested in your comments below. What do you struggle with in terms of composition? Okay, on to the next image. This shot here, again, I was composing it, and I felt like it was going to work quite well. I really like the shape of this tree. And I thought, I've just got it in this gap here, and I thought that's going to work really well. And then I got back to my hotel room, and I was looking through the images, and I thought this just doesn't work, but I felt it would work if I had more fog, and I just changed the separation between this tree and this tree here. And then I managed to actually do that. So I went back and there was more fog, and I got this shot, which is how I intended it really. So it gets rid of the background. I've got a better separation between this tree and this tree, and you know, this transforms that previous shot into something that's pretty spectacular really. So, and this is part of my black and white series that I haven't shared yet, but it's one of the shots in my black and white series of Madeira, not just Fennel, but the whole of Madeira. And again, in a similar manner, this was another shot that worked very well. Again, part of that black and white series. I liked how these trees were sort of bending over to the right-hand side, almost cowering away. And this tree here was sort of the wizard just sort of casting a spell on them. So I really like this. And it's all about separation, this. And I think just getting that separation right in this image has massively helped to generate something that I think's pretty interesting. So yeah, I like that. And then finally, I can show you a print, which is this one here. So if I just grab it, here we go. So this print is a shot that again is all about the balance of using fog to separate elements and the distance between trees. And this is called the Fennel family, and I just love how, you know, we've got the small child, toddler at the front just running away, and then mum and dad and the teenagers here, and I just feel that it works really well. But I was so careful on this image. I tried to shoot this image so many times and it didn't quite work, and it was like little things like where I placed that branch there, where this branch came in conjunction with the branch in the background. I wanted there to be overlapped elements, but I just wanted to be super careful about how that worked. So you can see the distance here I've got, and I didn't want that part of the branch here to overlap the trunk in the background, and I wanted separation between these two, so it looks like this tree is sort of running away a little bit. So I thought very carefully about this, and the light came out and everything just worked on this image. I was so pleased with it. Yeah, this is one as well that is a portfolio shot that's now on my site. Okay, the final image that I want to talk about is an image that worked, but I want to sort of go through the process of how that worked. I talked about this a little bit in my video on Seascapes, and it's this image here. So I'll show you the print first, actually. So it's this print here. Probably not going to be able to see it very well, but you can probably get an idea. So this print is again an image that's on my site, and you know, it took a lot of thinking about as well. I was down at the beach taking shots for about 3 hours, and it took me a while before I actually got to the location where I could get this. And before I talk about it in a little bit more detail, I want to show you a couple of prints, a couple of images that I took leading up to this. So this was one of them, and you can see that I was really careful about the positioning of these rocks, which I'll go into on the print. But the thing that mattered to me was this area up here, because there was this rock that was just in front of this big sea stack here. And this rock sort of blended into the sea stack, but then I realized that there was waves crashing. And when a wave crashed over that rock, it separated that rock from the sea stack. So it wasn't so much that I was just trying to catch that crashing wave, although that looks good, but it was also that separated the sea stack from that rock in the front. So you can see that in this one, where it isn't crashing at all, it just doesn't work, and that rock just blends into it, and that jars in the composition. It doesn't feel comfortable to look at that. Whereas you can see that on the shot that I finally took here, I've got a wave crashing over that rock, and that separates it from the sea stack in the background. And that is what makes this image, in my opinion. I mean, I had to take quite a few images on this, because I was using a 14mm lens, and I had to get the focus right. So I focused and got this right. So that was sort of taken care of. And then it was just a question of getting this element right when the wave crashed. And then in terms of these rocks at the bottom, what was really important for me was just to think about things that were leading through to this main boulder. So this was the thing that I was trying to take a picture of. This was the boulder that I really liked. I thought this boulder was really interesting. I liked the pattern on it. And so I just wanted to get that angle right, so there was nothing distracting at the bottom. So in those bottom corners, your eye sort of led through into that boulder. And it took a while. I tried a few different boulders before I got to this one, and I didn't feel that they quite worked, but this one worked really well. So yeah, I think that combination of that boulder, that wave, and the sea stack, and then the just soft pastel colours and that blue tone in this is what makes it, you know, quite a strong composition. I obviously wanted to give a little bit of room at the top of the image just to make it look a little bit stronger, and everything came together and it worked really well. Okay, so I hope that's been useful. I hope that's helped you. It's something that I feel that I go through every time. I try and understand what's worked and what hasn't in my compositions. If you want to look at any of these photos, then they're on my website. My website is built with Squarespace, who sponsored this week's video, so thanks to Squarespace. So if you're looking for a website, then Squarespace is an amazing all-in-one platform to build your portfolio using the amazing galleries or an online store. And if you're ready to go live with that, then make sure you go to www.squarespace.com/Nigel for 10% off. So thanks ever so much for watching. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And until next Sunday, bye.
Imagining he's my new best friend, and red is all I see. I got a PhD.